There's been a lot of Hyundai Kia EV news in the past week, and in today's video we're going to talk about some of it. Sales volumes are way up despite the EV slowdown. The Kia EV9 is now being made right here in America. And we finally have an idea of when the Ioniq 6 is going to be getting its mid-cycle refresh. So if you want to hear more about these topics, then stay tuned. Before we get started though, if you didn't already know, this past weekend I released a big survey for Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis EV owners. It'll take you about 5 minutes and it's going to collect a lot of information that I'm going to share with you guys on this channel about how many problems people are having with these cars, what they like and dislike about the cars, various habits that people have, like what they like to charge up to, what regen levels they like to drive in, and all sorts of other information. And all these comments that you guys provide at the end of the survey, I'm going to forward directly onto both Hyundai and Kia so they can see what you guys are actually thinking about these vehicles. The more people that do this, the better idea we have of how widespread some of the issues like ICCU failure and overheating charge ports actually are. So there's a link down in the description as well as the top of the comment section. Please consider spending the 5 minutes to take the survey. I would really appreciate it. So we'll start out talking about sales figures for the month of May. So let's start out with Kia in the EV9. In the month of May, they sold 2,187 units. There's no historical data from last May because the car wasn't being sold yet. But year to date so far, they've sold 7,766. Now the EV6, sales are up marginally, 18%. Which is nothing compared to Ioniq 5, which we'll get to. So they sold 2,660 in the month of May, bringing the yearly total to 8,770. And what I find really interesting here is that the EV9 is selling almost as well as the EV6 now. So it sure seems like the EV9 is a big hit here in the United States where folks like bigger cars. EV6 sales have never been great though. They've always been less than Ioniq 5. They've never quite gotten to those levels. So it's not really that surprising to see a bigger, fancier car coming into our market and doing just as well in a relatively short amount of time as the existing vehicle. Keep in mind, all these numbers are for the United States market. So unfortunately, Genesis doesn't usually provide their monthly sales figures. I don't know why they don't. Now moving on to Hyundai. They have had a huge month of May. Talking about Ioniq 6. So this May, they sold 1,099 units. Last May, when it was relatively new to the market, they sold 971. So sales are a little bit up. It'd be nice to see them up a little bit more. That brings this year's total to 5,998, up from 2,083 this time last year. But again, it did go on sale in the spring of last year, so that's not surprising that it's up 188%. The real star of the show is Ioniq 5. 4,449 units, which is an increase of 82% over this time last year where they sold 2,446. Ioniq 5 sales have almost doubled compared to this time last year. And so far year to date, 14,973. Last year to date at this time, 10,505. So this year is an increase of 43%. So Ioniq 5s, even though it's a 2.5-year-old car now, are still the bread and butter of Hyundai's EV lineup. Unfortunately, Hyundai doesn't break out Kona electric sales from the regular Kona, so we really have no idea how well that vehicle is selling. But I've looked on the EV Finder recently, and there are not a lot of Kona electrics around. A few months ago, there were a few. I don't know if they're just restricted production-wise and they're not actually bringing many to the dealerships, or maybe they're just selling that well considering their low starting price. Anyway, it's fantastic to see that the Ioniq 5 and 6 are still selling pretty well. And I think once the refresh of the Ioniq 5 comes out, it's only going to get better. Speaking of Ioniq 5, some news this week from an interview that Jose Munoz posted with Automotive News. They are saying that the Ioniq 5 is going to be rolling off the US production line in Georgia in October of this year, 2024. That's fantastic news. We knew that the plant was going to be opening later this year, but knowing that the Ioniq 5 is going to be the first one off the line is just awesome. This is a huge step in the right direction towards getting the Ioniq 5 to qualify for the full $7,500 EV tax credit here in the United States. The thing that will be really interesting to see when that does happen is how Hyundai is going to price these vehicles. It's safe to assume that because they're making the vehicle locally in the United States, it should be cheaper than importing it from Korea. But for months and months now, Hyundai has already been passing along a $7,500 and $8,000 discount on these cars. Looking at Hyundai's deals as they are today, right now you can get $7,500 in dealer cash if you get your own financing to purchase the vehicle. So it will be interesting to see if when they start selling it, if they will still include that $75,000 or $8,000 discount off the price of the vehicle. Regardless, it's still great news that it's going to be built here right on American soil by Americans. I really hope to get down to this plant when it does open. I would love to make a video showing you guys the production process of the Ioniq 5. Speaking of made in America, the EV9 was just Kia's first EV to roll off an American assembly line. And this isn't just the first EV made in Georgia by Kia, this is the first EV ever manufactured in the state of Georgia, which is a big manufacturing hub for a lot of automakers. Georgia's Governor Brian Kemp was just there this past week getting a tour and taking some photos with the executives from Kia and the first car rolling off the assembly line. So that is also really great. Kia has already stated that this car will qualify for the full $7,500 tax credit at a certain point. I don't know if that's going to be soon. As of this video, Kia is already offering up to $9,000 in cash when you purchase an EV9 and bring your own financing. So all the things I already stated regarding the Ioniq 5 and its US production apply here as well. We don't know what they're going to do when it does actually get the federal tax credit. But again, hopefully that MSRP number will just drop now that it's made on American soil. So last and certainly not least is something from the Korean car blog. They are reporting that the Ioniq 6 is going to be refreshed next May of 2025 with production and sales starting next July. So the rate at which this refresh is happening is not super surprising. Hyundai is pretty much on a 3-year sequence with updating their cars and refreshing them. The Ioniq 6 was officially unveiled in July of 2022, so almost 2 years ago now. And we should be seeing a lot of the same updates coming for the Ioniq 5, namely a bigger 84 kilowatt hour battery pack, the new CCNC software system, featuring that manual battery preconditioning button that I'm a big fan of. The Ioniq 6 is already the fastest charging EV here in the United States when you factor in its efficiency, so how far you can go on 1 kilowatt hour of energy. So I've been recently doing some testing with my car, and I have gotten well over 5 miles per kilowatt hour when in eco mode. And if you were to get 5 miles per kilowatt hour with an 84 kilowatt hour battery pack, that would give you a range of 420 miles, just a mind-boggling range figure. That still doesn't top cars like the Lucid Air, which can have well over 500 miles of estimated range, but that car is also more expensive and has a much bigger battery pack. So expect plenty of coverage on the refreshed Ioniq 6 next year. And on top of this, the Korean car blog is also reporting that the Ioniq 6N, their high-performance version similar to the Ioniq 5N, is going to be released by September 2025, and it'll be really cool to see what they do with that vehicle. Considering it's a lower, more aerodynamic sedan, I can only imagine it's going to be quicker to 60 than the Ioniq 5N, and probably even feel better on a racetrack. But this one's really far out. We're talking September 2025. This is going to be a while from now. The Korean car blog has shared some spy photos taken in Germany of widened wheel arches, bigger brakes with red calipers, big 20-inch wheels with a new design, and an additional rear lip spoiler. I know a lot of you would be really excited for a high-performance version of the Ioniq 6. So that's going to do it for this video. A ton of news. I wanted to put it all together just into one quick update for you guys. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Check out my store at ioniqguy.com for accessories for your Hyundai, Kia, or Genesis EV. And as always, I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.